how big is this market, and tell us how it's developing so far?
Yeah, sure. So when I talk about the compressed natural gas market and small-scale LNG, I'm talking more about for domestic use.
Okay.
So, as we know, in terms of LNG exports, I think, from an export perspective, Nigeria is probably about number 4, number 5 exporter in the world.
Okay.
So we currently export about 22 million tons per month. So from a gas export perspective, it's a tried and tested model that we currently, that we have.
Okay.
Where there's been a deficiency has been more on the domestic supply side. And that's been a function of more around infrastructure and also in terms of cost, in terms of, does it make sense for, to build that infrastructure and what's the cost of it? As you know, from a perspective, we're one of the largest flares in the world. I mean, that's, that's seen. So there's been a real drive in terms of moving towards actually providing more gas for domestic supply use, specifically targeting the power sector and also the other manufacturers. In terms of size, I mean, we're talking, in between power and just general use, about 180 billion cubic feet on an annual basis that's been consumed.
Okay.
In terms of the market, I'd call it very fragmented. So apart from, as we all know, the guys who own the gas pipeline infrastructure from, NGC and the guys that they concession it to.
Okay.
The guys who are supplying the compressed natural gas have been, it's been fragmented, and it's also been quite small as well. Now, what's driving the growth is that I think, everyone's made peace that it's highly unlikely that the grid is going to supply the power that's needed.
Okay.
And that's due to a number of factors, due to, generation issues,
yeah.
bottlenecks in terms of transmission, people have made peace with that. So what you're seeing is a lot of more the captive power projects.
Okay.
So to give an example, I'm a steel manufacturer. What do I need? I need reliable power supply. Power accounts for 40% of my cost. And within that, there's a fuel cost. So am I going to be sitting there burning fuel, or should I actually be using natural gas? And it's a bit of a no-brainer. So that's really what's driving that growth in terms of utilization of greater gas.
So should we expect this, because this now applies to both, I mean, the industrial guys and the regular consumers. Do you see this moving, because like you said, obviously, I mean, power issues are just dragging on forever, as it were. Do you see the pace picking up in terms of manufacturers realizing that, from a cost efficiency point of view, I can take out the fuel costs and let me just rely on the gas, as it were, and it's cheaper and all of that? But is it also, secondly, cost effective for the regular individual consumers themselves, if they want to go with, take this a notch higher?
Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your first question, I mean, that's always been there. I mean, if you look at costs, so the highest cost being diesel, then you look at LPG, then you go down to gas. The bottleneck has just always been around the infrastructure, both in terms of, the real hard pipes and the piping, and also in terms of logistics. So CNG is typically transported via trucks. So you can imagine the difficulties in terms of you've got all these trucks on the road trying to supply, trying to supply gas to a plant that's operating 24/7. It's been a logistical nightmare. And where you've seen it work really has been in the high urbanized areas, such as Lagos. So guys who are supplying your big end manufacturers with compressed natural gas. Because effectively what you're doing is you're driving a truck, and you're parking the truck there, and you're sucking it out, and then another one comes and takes over. People like to call it the virtual pipeline, but that's basically what it is. So it's been that sort of logistical hurdle. So what's happened is that as a manufacturer, you've been reluctant to do it because you always think, well, I want reliability. Am I sure that you're going to be able to deliver that consistent supply of gas that I need to power my plant? So that's always been one hurdle. And then in terms of gas to regular consumer, I mean, look, again, it's another sort of no-brainer because it's an input cost, right? So so what you pay is a function of the fuel that you use, as you know. I mean, as most people know.
So for the small-scale liquefied natural gas, that appears to have worked well in China. Tell us about China's success story, and what examples? Can we take a lead from China?
Yeah, look, I mean, so I think really what drove that use to LNG is really, from a China perspective, has been environmental. Because as you know, I don't know if you've ever been to Beijing,
Yeah.
They call it the smog. So if you go to Beijing, you can actually stand there and
Yeah, no,
you won't be able to see the sun.
fog, yes,
So what really drove the increasing use of gas has been to try and basically cut down on the use of coal. So that's what's really been driving that change. And you know, I think from a China perspective, I always say, you know, when the Chinese want to do something, they do it. You know, when they say we want to do X, Y, and Z, they'll get it done.
Okay.
So what the Chinese have done is they basically have taken the technology that's been developed from other parts of the world, and they've been able to actually develop it there. And also, where the difference is in terms of from a financing perspective and unlocking the financing to be able to make that work. So in terms of us being able to take an example, it's
especially
really
the technology, I would think.
Especially the technology. I mean, the technology is available.
Okay.
I think the inhibitor has been the financing, and it has been, you know, getting those types of projects underway.
Why has that been a problem?
Because it does require quite a bit of upfront investment. So you are taking quite a bit of upfront risk in terms of investing in something that may or may not pay off. So that's been risk number one. Risk number two has been getting the upstream supply from the actual upstream, gas producers. And it's not something to be taken lightly, right? And the reality is that there's not a lot of guys that have the requisite, experience and expertise in terms of getting this done. But slowly, we are seeing greater interest in this space, and we're seeing guys offshore who are looking at the market, very interested in this market, because there is a strong manufacturing base, not as strong as we may
so
like.
I mean, if there is interest, that is a good first step. So
that's an excellent first
we
step.
Definitely see that much needed investment. I mean, you believe and you note that it could become commonplace, perhaps sooner than later? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, look at Brazil. I mean, a place like Brazil, Argentina, gas is commonplace. You basically drive your car. They use it to power their cars. It's definitely
all right. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that one.
Excellent.
Cody, thank you for talking to us today. It's been a pleasure. Cody Aduloju, Head of Energy and Infrastructure, West Africa.